Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So we are going to make this little bit lengthy video for your assignment in to explain more about what you need to be doing. Many of you may have seen your assignment video where I have shown you this guide where it shows several examples of what you are supposed to do. Now you haven't seen any example interfaces in this case, and we haven't done any interfaces in the classroom. However, I am trying to make one complete video where you can see me doing the most important part for your assignment. That way you can start immediately. Those of you who know a little bit of Java can already start doing your application. So that is why I made this video for you guys. Okay, so you have all these database tables that you have to fill through your Java program. So I'll be giving you the database, and you can see here this is I have here the database itself. Since it is about HDC theme park, I call the database HDC theme park, or you can call it any name you want. I just thought maybe this is a better idea to give here a company name, so something like HDC is the people who are generally doing these kind of things in terms of new places, new theme parks and water parks and stuff like that. So this is an example of the database which you can use for that. So you can just use the example I have created here, Control A, copy it everything into your phpMyAdmin or into your MySQL window. So if you have WAMP server running, you can just find WAMP server, sorry, not this way, WAMP server, find your MySQL and go to your MySQL console here. Okay, depending on your password, I have a password, you can create everything. Okay, that's one thing you can do. You can just paste everything here, or you can do, or you can go to phpMyAdmin. Those of you who have phpMyAdmin, if you prefer that way, you can create here and go and paste your coding here into the screen as well. So I have the password here, and go inside, you create your database and go to the SQL here, type in everything. This is one way. What I usually do is, when I'm teaching the classrooms, I have this application that I have created which I can use for my online classes, so that it doesn't show anything else, just only what I enter here. So this is what I will do. So first of all, when you get this file, I'll upload this file on Moodle for your assignment. Create this file first. Okay, you can see here there's a database called HDC theme park, and it's going to create all these databases for you, all these tables for you, which is going to be the base of your application where your data will be stored. So if you don't know what the database is doing, what the SQL is for, don't worry about that, because that's not part of your syllabus to learn the SQL. But you should at least have some brief idea of this database and what is happening in this MySQL file. So those of you who have done previously some database may be familiar with that, but anyway, you don't have to worry because you have been given the database. So you go to your database, paste in here. This is creating all the tables. You have customer table, you have room table, hotel table, activity table, and booking records as well as ticketing records will be saved here. So you create this database. Let's go ahead and done. That's it. So now if you say use, in always when you are referring to the MySQL, you have to say which database you want to use. So use HTC theme park, and everything else let's delete, and we can check whether the database has created show tables. Okay, show tables. You can see here we have these tables. Okay, so now we are ready to do some coding, and this was the example we have seen in the classroom where you had tried to create customer.java, like this. So assuming that customer.java is what you are using, you can see here in your database, when we created the database, you have customer table which has customer ID. So this customer ID is basically customer ID card number, and in this case we are using customer ID card number like this, and we have a separate field called ID here. So for this class we will not have this value, we will only have what we have in the database. So forget about the ID. Okay, don't worry about the ID, sorry. This is because in some programming languages it's better to have a separate primary key. For now we already have a primary key, which is uh, because we are inserting the data into the database, and ID card number here we are referring to the customer ID card number, assuming these are all locals. Of course you are allowed to create a database where there can be foreigners, but let's stick to this and the SETA as well. Okay, so forget about those stuff that you are talking about with ID. Okay, basic example: ID card number, name, and phone number. You can see here in the database ID card number, phone number, and his name. And this is where the customer is, right? So this is called the customer model, you can say. This is the customer class where his data is. Now you have the customer UI, which we have created here, and you have seen me doing this in the classroom. What you did was you went here, you right clicked your project, right click, new, JFrame form, yeah, and then you got this, and from here you dragged these buttons and everything and create this layout. And what you need to know is when you create this layout, there are several settings you have to do. You see here there is an external border here, there's a panel, so you have to put a panel first. Onto the panel you put your items, and bring another panel and you put your buttons here. If you wanted, you could have separately brought labels, text boxes separately, that will work fine. Even buttons, automatically the layout will fit into itself. But I am asking you to create this like this, with having a panel where you can put all the buttons separately and move it separately. See, you can move all the buttons together. That's why, because it's easier to move around. And that is the basic idea of creating it that way. Another important thing is, after you create this layout, please give meaningful names. See, for example, this is a box, this is a text box, so let's change the variable name and let's call this as ID card number. In fact, we will use exactly what the database has. See, it has customer ID. Okay, I like to use that, customer ID. And name is exactly customer name, not name, customer name. This is the phone number, customer phone number. Try to stick this where this will be very easy for you. Okay, so this is what we have in the view, what you can say. So when we have a graphical user interface, we can call it as a view, what the customer sees. So in the MVC framework, MVC architecture, model belongs to the customer class. This is the model. Then you have UI, which is the view, so MVC. Then you have C, which is controller, which we will create now after we do this. Then you have this, did we give a name here? Yeah, we did. Okay, also the buttons. This is a search button, so make it search button. Edit button, always use camel case. Edit button. For variable names, use camel case in, unless they are database fields which you are trying to give as what is in the database. Save button. And we have the add button and the save button separately, because sometimes students might confuse if you try to use the same button twice. So here this is delete button. I'm not sure if I gave the correct name to this one now. Search button, as simple. Okay, that is a good layout here you have created. So what happens is, you will enter customer ID card number, customer name, and customer phone number, and you will add the customer, right? Maybe we can move search to the bottom, I'm not sure, that's up to you. Okay, so few things that I have done here. If you remember, I have made these things little bit bigger in font, so you just check them, right click properties. From here you can change the fonts and everything. If you have a button, all of them also give them the same type of width and height. Also go to the properties and change few things here, like if font size, if you want a background color, and so on and so forth. You can go and do that as well. For example, maybe all the buttons, we can make them little bit grayer, make them a little bit more gray, something like this. Yeah, so that's up to you. Okay guys, now don't make it too colorful, because applications are not that nice when they are colorful, that colorful. Of course, another important thing is, I removed the uh, minimize, maximize, and close button, because I want the window to be exactly how I made it, and I don't want customer to drag and drop and make it bigger. So that is controlled. If you remember, there's an empty space here. You right click, go to properties. What we want to do is go into the JFrame properties. If you click inside somewhere and go to properties, it will take you into the panel, because you're having a panel here. So you have to make sure you find that window, JFrame, you know, and then you go into the properties. From the frame, go down until you find this thing called undecorated. See, undecorated, mark it. That means you are going to remove those close buttons and everything, and we gave a small button here where the customer will click this in order to close the application. So let's go to change the variable name here also. This is what, this is the close button. All right, so basically that's the UI. Now what happens when the customer clicks add, save, delete? This is what we have to do now. Okay, so you have your customer model. Similar to this you have also done in your classroom. I hope you have done the room, the hotel class, where you have hotel ID and hotel name. Also you have room class where you created room ID and then room number, room type, and these things. Also for the these tools, you have these two models. This is something you will do, and we will also do them together later on. Right, now you have a customer view. What I told you is that we have another item called customer controller. Okay, go to your project, right click, new Java class, customer controller. Make sure you always give capital names for classes. Customer controller, finish. So what is customer controller? This is the controller where customers data will be handled. Okay, important thing for all the controller functions. When you have a controller, the controller is basically going to have functions which are going to work when the customer clicks a button. So he clicks search, and then you are going to execute a function in the controller. He is going to click add, and you are going to execute a function in the controller. That's what is usually happening. Okay, so in the controller you will create some basic functions. So try to stick to this main concept. One of the concept is you create these functions as they are public, and because this is coming from the controller, just make them, all of them, as static, public static void. Okay, it's not going to return anything in this case, so it's an index method. What an index method does is it shows all the customers in a separate UI. Then we have public static void, and this is going to be create. So you are trying to create a customer, and that happens, that is what we will do when we are going to show this window to the customer. This UI will come from somewhere, right? So that somewhere will be this create function. Okay, we will fill these things later on. For now there is no variables inside them. Public static void. Once the customer has been shown the create screen, he will fill it and he will send it to the database. This is going to be the store. Okay, so in order to store this information to the UI, he is going to send in information to the customer about the customer, and one of those informations will be whatever those array has been. Okay, see, for example, this UI has some information: ID card number, name, and phone number, and these are information that has to be inserted into the customer, and customer has this information. So it's going to put this string values. If it is a string, it will put in string, and in some cases it may be an integer, so then you have to convert it into integer. One of the best ways you can do is in the store method you can receive these items as an array. Okay, as an array of data that has to be inserted. And if the values are predefined, let's say if you have a variable where you say this is an integer, then you have to send it as an integer. So you can't put all of them inside the same array, because usually an array has a same data type. Okay, so one of the simplest things you can do is you add here the details of the data you are expecting from the customer UI, and that is, you expect the UI to give you the ID card number. So let's stick to exactly what we had here in the customer. So you have to give the ID card number of the customer. Now in this case I prefer that we stick to database field names again, because we are in the controller. So I mean, if someone wanted, they could have even given the customer also those names, but the reason why we didn't give it is because we said in Java this is the standard where you follow camel casing, right? But if you are familiar with database terminologies, then we usually give underscores. Okay, so let's give here customer ID. You have to give me customer ID, you have to give me customer name, and also you have to give me the customer phone number. You know, it's also a string in this case. Right, so given these details, and I'm going to store this information to the database. So this is the store function, and after this, what you have is public static show. Okay, void, of course. Void means it doesn't return anything. Show. Okay, so what happens in the show method is you are looking for a customer and you are trying to show a customer. So you are saying, I want to look up this customer, I want to say this customer. So you can do that by just sending the customer ID. So string customer ID, and then this show method is going to show you that customer in a separate graphical window, like one customer data, like exactly what you see here. This is the customer UI. So when you click search, it is supposed to go to this function and show you that customer, if the customer exists, of course. And then the last method will be not the last method, edit, yeah, public static. So always you have your controller configured this way, edit. So edit is when you click this edit button, like you have someone here and now you want to edit this guy. Okay, for example, his information has been seen and now you want to edit this information, not just view them, you want to edit them. So after editing, you will save them. Okay, so actually this button is going to be edit text. It's not going to be save, it's edit. Okay, and we will work on this button later on when it comes to save. Okay, edit button. So what are you going to edit? You are going to edit a specific customer. Again, you will give the detail of the customer you are trying to edit, and then it will show the customer that you that is going to be edited. Okay, now you will be in the next section, which is update. Public static void update. So what happens in update is, again, you are going to change some information of the customer. Previously you have created new customer, now you are going to update a customer, so you have to give new information, you see, to the customer, and this information will be updated, of course. The important thing here is, see, you are updating a customer, which means what? You cannot change his ID card number. If you are changing ID card number, this is altogether a new customer. So the database has to check if you are updating a customer that already exists, or you are trying to create a customer that doesn't exist. If that's the case, it is not an update, it's a new customer. So make sure you allow those things accordingly. Okay, so that is updating, and then we can say we have the last method, which is public static void destroy. And destroy is you are deleting a customer. Okay, for example, you know this is the customer ID you want to delete, and you say, okay, remove this guy from the database. Okay, this is what a normal controller is. Okay, guys, so you create a controller for room, hotel, and everything. You create these things, and they always have similar architecture. You have a class, then you have the UI for it, and there is the controller. In some cases, you may not have a UI, meaning, for example, you are trying to show a UI that doesn't belong to one table, it has information from many tables. In that the case, there will be a separate controller, and you will of course deal with different tables. That's a different story, but still we will come to that. The basic idea is still there will be a model, view, and a controller, or at least there will be a controller and a view, and the model will be one or more tables. Okay, guys, so once you have this information, you are set up and ready, and let's try to figure out what we can do in order to make one customer, save one customer to the database. All right, this is the add button. So if I fill this information, initially remember this UI is not visible in our program, because you can see here the main method is customer theme park. This is the main method, right? This is the main method you have created. So we can't use this main method because we are now creating a graphical interface. So let's try to remember this. Later on we are going to have a bigger screen, which is a bigger UI, where you're going to see the other details like book room, book buy tickets, then those kind of interfaces. But for now you only have one UI, and that's the customer UI. So what we will do is we use the customer controller class, and we will call this where is my main class? Theme park. Okay, customer controller dot, you see, you can call it directly, and you're going to create a new customer. Yes, okay. So this is trying to create a new customer, and it goes into the, sorry, my microphone here is some problem. Okay, it goes into this controller class create, and here it will create and display this UI. So what it does is it creates a new customer UI, new customer UI dot set visible true. Okay, let's try to run this program now. There we have it. You see, let me minimize this one. This is the window here. Okay, so this is the item you have. Now it is appearing at the top left corner. We can solve this problem. Let's try to solve this immediately. There is in the UI, you go to source code, find your constructor. You know what is a constructor, right? Constructor has the same name as your class name. Here it is, the constructor. Now much of this coding is auto-generated because you have dragged and dropped these buttons. So still you are able to control here. So you can say this dot, it will help you set location relative to, put here null. This means put it in the center. Let's run it again. You see, now it appears in the center. So this is currently the idea, and now none of the buttons work because we haven't configured them. Even the close button doesn't work. So minimum we can do is make the close button work. Okay, so you go here and double click the close button. It takes you into this screen. Again, double click it. Yeah, there we are. So if we are in the close button, then it says here put your codes here. So this means system dot exit. You exit with a 1, means success. Doesn't matter what you use, but system dot exit. So like that you can configure more buttons. See, there it is, button is gone. Okay, so it closes the application. That's the basic idea of how the buttons are configured. Okay, now we have a small interface. We can start with the customer UI and make one customer work. Okay, so let's go to the UI, go to the add button. So you are going to fill this information, you are going to click add. After you click add, okay, it will take you somewhere. Where is it? Here, add button. Oh, I clicked edit button. How is it possible? This is add button. Sorry about that. This is edit button. Edit button. Okay, we'll double click add button. Now you are here in the add button. Where is it? Yeah, okay, add button. Okay, what happens in the add button? What happens in the add buttons is you're going to grab the customer information and send it into the customer controller's store method. Alright, so find the data from the customer. One of them is you have to find out string, same information as what you have here, guys, and that is where is this information? Yeah, customer ID. Customer ID equal, what is customer ID? Customer ID is going to be what this window is going to give you, this one. Okay, so you remember you have the same name, sorry, equal this dot customer ID dot get text. Okay, this is the text box. If you don't put this, it's going to be a problem because you are having a customer ID and customer ID same spelling. Okay, string customer name is going to be equal to this dot customer name dot get text. You are actually getting the text box data. Okay, that's why you have get text. Last one, string customer phone number equal this dot phone dot get text. Okay, if you get confused, you can use a different variable name for the text boxes. That will be easier. Anyway, this is how this is more professional. It looks better. Yeah, so you have the information now. Now what you do is you send it across to the customer controller. Use the customer controller. Okay, and dot. What are you going to do? You're going to store this into the data. You see, automatically it picks up. So you send the data to the store function, data goes into the store function. Now the store function will check, of course, whether you have the proper data or not. Of course, here itself you can check, for example, see for example, all of this has to be filled, there cannot be empty. So you're not going to call this function unless you have the data that you need. So if the data is empty, we are not going to call this method. They have to be, let me put something else here, trim, dot trim. What it does is it removes the extra white spaces that people usually put on their text boxes. People sometimes fill and put a additional space sometimes. They will fill it and put a space, or they will put a space before they're filling it. So those kind of things. Trim is a good method to remove those extra white spaces. Anyway, once you have the information, you check if this item, if this dot equals nothing or space, if it's just space, empty, there's nothing in it, or okay, shift pipe, or this is how you put or customer name dot equals same thing if it is empty, or if it is just spaces, we can check that also. For now we are just checking if it is empty. Okay, if the customer puts a lot of spaces, it still is going to be empty because you are putting trim here, right? So then customer phone number dot equals, if they are equal to spaces, we cannot allow him to we cannot allow him to continue, so else we can execute this function. Otherwise we have to give an error message. So remember that thing, j option pan dot show message dialog. Okay. So there is actually a way to do this. With an icon, error icon. Yeah, let's try to use this one. So this and then you are going to show icon. The message is going to be this is going to be the title. So let's put the title as no spaces. Okay, no empty fields. No empty fields allowed. It's better to say not. This is an error message. Error. Please fill all the fields. So you can handle it differently, but this is the basic idea, and this is just an integer value. I'm not sure what this actually means. This is the icon. So here j option pan dot error message. Yeah, it's going to give a nice error message. Okay, increment cannot be converted to icon. So this goes in here. Yeah, error message. And then the last one is it has there some icon, and we don't have a separate icon, right? So let's try to see j option pan dot error. Is that the icon? No. J option, there should be a default icon. Let me try dot. Do we have icons? We don't have icons. Error message. No, that is if we have our own icon, right? Okay, so without it. Alright, so this is an error message we are displaying if the fields are not filled. Meaning, for example, you run this program and you click, you don't fill anything, and you click add. This error. Oh, we have replaced the. We have. This goes in here. Comma. It's actually like this. See, add. See, please fill in all the fields. Error message. Okay, so that is if you haven't filled. Otherwise, you will send it to the data to the customer controller. Okay, so now you are sending the data to be stored into the database. Remember. Okay, so here in the customer controller, now you are here in this store function, and you can easily see if you try to see out or s out means just print. For example, let's say customer name. I just want to show you that it is here. Customer name plus cus underscore name. Just show that it works. Yeah, so for example, let's fill in A09, and I'm going to do my own details: name Naushad, phone number 79923669, and then click add. See here, it is receiving this information. Yeah, so now what you need to do is you have to store them. So what you do is you create a customer, use a customer class. Okay, use a customer, simple C, equal new customer. Of course, remember that simple customer, this is just a variable. You could have used anything, sample customer or new customer, and then you send in across the data. Okay, see, if you go to customer, you have this order constructor. Okay, so you don't have to worry about ID anymore, right? ID card number, name and phone number, send it across. ID card number, name and phone number. Okay, remember to remove the string. So I'm sending these things, sending these things, sending these things. Okay, now we have this customer. See, this customer class where we have a new customer, and then we have to save it to the database. We only created a customer now. Okay, so after creating the customer, we actually has to save this customer to the database. And what you do is you do this in the controller. You create a separate function. See, controllers can have many other functions, not just these functions. So you put a small store function here and call it as this dot save, and then what you must do is send a customer. Okay, so save method doesn't exist, so let's go down here. Here we create this method, public static void save. Okay, so you might be asking, you already have a store method, why are you creating a save method? So this method is not part of customer controller. It is going to talk to other types of controllers to save. So essentially you could have saved other types of customer as well, or you can easily even save the data here by calling the database controller here. But I like to keep it simple, that way all the models will look same, all the controllers will look same, where you have save and then customer, and it goes and save the customer, where the save function's job is save into the database. So I'll give you a different name. In fact, I'll say save to DB. Okay, save to DB, this customer, save to DB, save to database. Right, you need a customer here, customer, send in a customer, I can save him. All right. Okay, so this is the part where we are going to have another lengthy discussion, guys, and that is because now we have the data from the UI. What is this error? Non-static variable, non-static variable, which is non-static variable? Customer, non-static variable. This cannot be a reference from a static. There, right? Okay, there is no this. Okay, save to the database. So this is you can't create an object using static class, right? Right. Now we are here in this save to DB function. The function of this one is to save to the database. Okay, this is going to lead to another 20 minutes or so of extra coding, which we are going to do just for the database setup. Okay, guys, let's do it. So this complete the idea. If you watch this video entirely, you get the thing. So pause where necessary, but make sure you follow this. Okay, let's create a new database controller. Right. Okay, so here is the scenario where we don't have a UI, we only have a controller. Why? Because database controller is just a UI. Sorry, not customer, database controller. Okay, so database controller is a separate piece of code that you have added here, and in order for the database controller to work, you need a database, which you already have. here, you see, and you need a connector. That means that my database needs to connect to the database. So in order to do that, I have here in our folder this MySQL connector, which you can download from internet, or you can just download from Moodle. I'll upload this. Once you have that file, you go to your project, you say in the libraries, right click, add jar. Okay, you are adding a jar, remember. So in order to add the jar, this is the idea. This file, you can navigate to the file where you are. For now, let me try to find this path, because I actually want to add the file in this path. No, that's not the way I wanted to add. Remove, add jar file, java 2. This is the file. Select. Yeah, you see, just that file, only that file. So you are just going to add this file. Now you have a MySQL connector. Okay, let's configure this controller. So this database controller is going to be different from customer controllers, because in the case of customer controller, you are dealing with a model. You are creating, editing, updating these things. But in case of database controller, there is no model. You are directly connecting to the database. So here there will be a few interesting things, and that is we are going to use database connection. So we are going to create a database connection where we are going to configure it to be able to connect to the database. Right. So private static connection variable, put a connection variable, connection, and this is coming from that library that we have added, database db connection, called db connection. Okay, just a variable, we are not going to initialize it. Control shift I to import java.sql.connection. Okay, and then so sometimes you might realize why did we had to import that file, because we are using the library, that connection class, and it is in this link. Another one we will need is private static. So we have the database connection, and then we have what known as the result set. So the result set as capital. Result sets come from after you execute a query. db result, I'll call it db result. In fact, here I'll put a C capital. db results. Okay, or db result set you can also call, no problem. db results, I'll make it result, because you are going to get one result, meaning one query response, right? Again, control shift I, you get this import, or you have to type it. If it doesn't work, you have to import you have to import manually by typing it, right? So we have imported these two things. In this case, we are going to have two functions mainly. One is public static void send query to MySQL. Okay, this is one of the functions you are going to need. Send query to MySQL. Okay, so what is the query? String query, give me the query, I'll send it to the MySQL. So the job of this function is connect to the database, send the query, close the connection. So all those things has to be created inside this try catch block, because a lot of errors might come out from the database connection, so you have to handle those errors, which is why we have this catch. Okay, so if you are familiar with these things, you will know try catch block means exception handling, which we'll study separately, but for now just make sure we have these things and put here exception E. Okay, so if there is any error, then it will handle that error. Of course, you have to do something here to show it to the interface, but for now we'll leave it empty. We'll handle it later, because all the errors you have to show it separately in a separate combined format. Not every time there's an error. And also another important thing is the controller is not going to pop up any windows, it's not going to show you error messages and those kind of things. They will appear after you are done in the UI, and you can put a message box on the UI. Of course, if there is an error, then you can choose to show pop-up messages here also. There is nothing wrong with that, but general practice is all the types of messages will appear in the UI, not in the controller, but controller can trigger UI. Okay, that's for sure. Right, now let's have database connection. So what we do is we say class, this is exactly what you do. You follow it, there is no other way, just practice makes perfect. So exactly follow this method. For name, so this means use the library that I have imported, and inside the library there's a class called com.mysql.jdbc, Java database connection, that's the correct word, dot driver. So what this is just a driver. So the library acts as a driver, so your Java application talk to your MySQL database. And like that we have driver for Oracle, we have Oracle SQL Server, like that. Okay, don't worry about much. Okay, now we have this DB connection which we will establish. So we say DB connection equal. Now here of course you are going to see your database username password, but for this case you have to type it anyway. Okay, if you want you can put it separately in a separate DB connection, you know, that is up to you, but I usually type in there because it doesn't change anyways. If it's going to be here and you're just going to connect from here, and that's it, your database and appears in one function only. If you want you can create a separate class where you put all your database string and also you put your username password like this. Let's do this, it's better actually. So you create one more class, new Java class, and call this as database. Alright, so what is the database? Private. It's a lot of coding, I can understand, but let's try to follow. If you can do this, your assignment is done. Private string database string. Okay, private string database. This is going to be a static variable, guys. Private static string database string private static string database username, and then private static string database password. So you can have them separately configured like this, kind of better, right? Right, okay, so your connection is using the string database string equal JDBC. Okay, you follow exactly like this. This is how you enter it. MySQL colon, then you give the database port and everything. So localhost, and default port is 3306 for MySQL. In some students you might be using 3308, so please test. So give the actual database name. Okay, so in this case we have created HDC as a database anyway. Oh, sorry, HDC theme park. This is the database name, HDC theme park. So that's your database name, and once you have the database name, then you put a comma and then give the connection username password. This is going to be equal to root. For now it's actually root, and of course this you will have separately hidden. I'll just show it to you. My password is root as well, so just root. Usually in real world of course there will be more, right? Okay, so this is going to be your connection data, and then because they are private information you have to create getters and setters, right? So you enter the code here. What you can do is, another way you can do is you can just create a database connection here. So you can say driver manager dot get connection, driver manager dot get connection, and then put in your database string comma database username. You can just copy paste as well, right? Okay, so there is your database manager. Let's make it also as a separate private variable, private static connection. So this is going to be a connection is equal to driver manager dot you have to import these classes, both of them. Driver manager dot get connection database string username and password, and of course connection equal to driver manager dot get connection database username and password. What is this error here? Okay, you have to give a try and catch block for this also. Okay, if the connection is not working, maybe username and password is wrong. Yeah, that could happen, right? Okay, no problem. What you can do is cut this and then equal null initially, and then it will not allow null, I guess. Expected identifier private static connection db connection. It's because I had a connection there. Equal okay null. Alright, so you have a getter here. Create a getter, insert code for a getter of your database string, not everything, just the connection. Generate, see, get your database connection, and of course you have to initialize the database connection. Say db connection equal driver manager, and this thing you have to what is this error? Exception. Okay, try catch exception e general exception, right? Here also we have an error, so remember we have to handle this later. Okay, so wherever there is a database error, we have to display it. For now, let's try to display anyways error, so that we know it's coming from database. Later we have to handle this via graphical window. Here also let's have it here. Okay, so connection is going to be equal to my database class which I have, and dot get connection. Simpler. Okay guys, so that's what I was trying to show you here. You can create a separate class called database, therefore your database username password are hidden, and then you just ask for the connection by entering it this way. You have the connection, the setup is complete. Okay, so once we have the database connection, here we can do everything inside the try catch block, because otherwise there can be an error somewhere else also. So we keep the exception running, no problem. Okay, so once you have the information and the database connection is done, and if the connection is not null, you have to check that. Okay, if you have to check that if the connection is null or not. If the db connection not equal to null, if it is not null, because if it is null we can't continue. If it is not null, then we will continue to do the database query. So what are you going to do is you are going to run something called statement. Statement is a SQL statement, okay, that you are going to send to the database. So you can send this SQL automatically to the database, and it is going to send the data connection query. So use the db connection, and then this one is important. So there are many ways to send this into the database, as a create statement, prepared statement. For now, just send it as a create statement without worry much. Okay, here, and then of course this is your creating a variable to send your query, and then again import this library because you're using statement class. So statement dot execute query. So execute query, execute update is when you are sending a query that's going to update the database, it's going to change the database. So it's going to be execute update query. Okay, and then you are just going to send a query here, and that is the query that is being sent by the user. Therefore our database connection is complete, and is going to send the data into the database in order to insert the data to the database. Alright, now you will close the database connection. Once you have finished this, you're going to close it. So closing the database connection is required in many places. So for that reason, what you're going to do is you're going to close this connection by creating a separate method up here, so that we know this is a common method. So public static void close connection, public static void close connection. I start with a simple close connection, and then because it's a static variable, you don't have to send in any variable, it just closes. db connection dot close, sorry, close. Okay guys, now our database is connected, see, and we will be able to send the data. Thus this is one method, sending the data to the database, or even closing you have to give try catch block. Oh, you can see how difficult it is sometimes, right? Yeah. So easier way to do it is you can just put throws SQL section, SQL exception. Okay, you just configure it this way. That way, because the error is coming from here, this guy will handle it. You don't have to handle it up there. So if you don't want to handle it, you can throw it, and then whoever is calling the method, where is that close connection? Where is database close connection? It was here. Okay. Oh yeah, we haven't called it yet. Okay, close connection. Yeah, whoever is calling it will handle it. See, this close will execute error, and this guy will catch it. That's why you can just throw it instead of having try catch. Okay guys, so that's basically what we are trying to do here for now. And then even in the customer controller, here in save into the customer, we can just send the query to the database. Let's do that before we end the class. Remember, here there is a second function which is going to be receiving the data from the MySQL, like if you are selecting data. But for now, we are going to only send the data, so it stores into the database. That is our step one. Once that is done, we can end our class, and we can make a separate video where we can receive the data from the MySQL database. Okay, so you are here, you have to save a customer data into the database. So what you will do is you create a query. Remember, now this is real, this is SQL, okay, SQL query. So this is going to be something you have to be familiar with, and you are going to do is you are going to use the database controller dot send query to MySQL. This is what you are going to do, and after sending, you are going to show confirmation message that the customer data has been inserted. Okay, something like that. So for now, just save it this way. Insert into customer values. You see, so this is MySQL that you have to know. You're sending 3 values, so we are going to send them here. Remember, here this is appending. So bracket is part of SQL query. This bracket is also part of SQL. Our variables are going to be what is extra. So customer dot get ID card number, comma. So we have to get the ID card number. Then we have to give a comma, and then we have to give the next item. So press enter here. Okay, tab a little bit. Yeah. So comma is required after every statement, and then you give customer dot get customer name, and then you put a plus and a comma again and enter. You see, so follow similar architecture. You know, you have to have a comma after every insert field. Yeah. Okay, the next one is the last one, and that is customer dot get his phone number. That's it guys, plus this part. So this is going to generate an SQL query and send it to the database query, and that is going to send the data. Let's try to see our database first. So we have here select stuff from customer. Is it customer? Yeah. Now you have nothing. You can see here there is nothing. So let's run our program and insert a customer. ID card number is 099649. Name, say no shot, and then phone number 7992369. You're going to grab this information and you're going to add. Click add. We are only handling close button and add button for now. Other buttons doesn't work. Add. You see, there's some error. You see, there's some error in the database. So let me close this application. Check if the database gave anything or not. No, there is nothing. So there's some error in the SQL statement which we have to check. And let's do the error check-in here. I'm going to do a little bit of changes to my database dot thing here. Here you can see there is an error. We're just displaying the error. We don't know what is the actual error. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have throws SQL exception, and I'm going to remove this try catch from here. That way I don't have to handle the error here. Okay, Control S, Control Shift I, and then I can directly use only my database controller part to handle the errors. So only one location to handle errors, and that is this guy in the database controller here. So what is the error? Let's put plus e dot get message. It will show the error, this e. Username password 3306. We can check if that is the correct port. Is it the correct port? You can verify that by checking the port where it is running. Let's see the error A099649 and 7992369. And don't worry about these kind of errors, it will always come. Unknown column A099649 in the field list. Okay, so there's a error in the SQL statement. Yeah, insert into customer values A099649 is a customer ID. Isn't it in the database? What is the type? Watcher. Yeah, integer. Oh, that's okay, right? That's okay, right? It's integer. A099649 didn't work out well, and that is because let's give insert into customer. We are going to enter. Sorry, guys. Customer ID. You have to give the order of your system. Customer ID, comma, customer name, comma, and then sometimes it's a good idea to give the arrangement of column orders. So we are going to insert these values in this order: customer get ID card number and get phone number, and then it goes on. I'm going to do a little bit extra here to see if my SQL statement is actually correct. SQL query. Let's run it. Okay, always trial and error. Remember, there is no easy way. You have to try this. That's the best way to learn things. And then 7992369. Add. Yeah. Okay, you can see here. This is the problem. Alright, I understood immediately now. So anything that is a string going to have a single quote, a single quote, a single quote, and a single quote, a single quote, and a single quote, because everything is a string. It's not integer. And integer also, you can give a string as a single quote, it will work out fine. Now shall, and I'm not giving any message box, right? That will handle later, that it is successfully inserted or something like that. Add, you see, no error this time. This is what I was talking about. It should be given inside these kind of single quotes. Let's go to the database, select stuff from customer. Voila, you see, it's really good. Okay, so we are saving the data from a Java program into MySQL program. That's it for this class, guys. Thank you very much for joining. It's a little bit of lengthy, quite lengthy video, but this is the essence of your assignment. You have to create model view controller. You have to create these UIs. You have to associate the data like this, where you can add, edit, and delete the data. And what should happen is, when you have added a new customer, we are supposed to clear the interface. We are supposed to close this interface and take the customer back into the main interface. For now, we don't have a main interface, so we are here for now. Okay, that's it, guys. Thank you very much. I'll see you later in next class.